Welcome to My Business Matters, the Michigan Chamber podcast.
Welcome to My Business Matters, the podcast of the Michigan Chamber, where we talk with community and business leaders about the issues shaping Michigan's economy, public policy, and future. I'm your host, Jim Holcomb, the President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. Today's episode is part of a special series, Michigan's Future in Focus, where we talk with influential voices running to shape Michigan's future, from those seeking to be our next governor to people representing communities across our state. I'm honored today to be talking this time around with Senator Aric Nesbitt. He serves as the Senate Republican leader, and he represents Michigan's 20th Senate District. That includes portions of Berrien, Van Buren, Allegan, and Kent counties. And importantly, he's also a 2026 candidate for Michigan's highest office, that of governor. Senator Nesbitt, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Jim.
Great. Well, running for governor, that's a big decision. You've been in public service quite a while. You've always been a good representative of people. You've been a good friend of business. You've been somebody who's always accessible and a thought leader. But running for governor, that's a whole nother step up, and big personal commitment. You have a young family. What goes in to driving you to seek this office?
Well, Jim, unfortunately, people, families, and businesses just can't make it in Michigan anymore. It's tough to make it in Michigan. I'm running for governor so that working families, small businesses, and most importantly, our next generation are able to make it here in Michigan. I'm Aric Nesbitt. Those that don't know me, it's Aric with an A, a little different spelling, but it's the middle of 5 kids. They all started with A's, and by the time Mom got to me, it was either going to be Aric or Erica with an A, and I'm sure glad she went to Aric. I know I would have grown up a little tougher if it was Aric.
Makes you resilient.
But yeah, absolutely. But I grew up in Southwest Michigan on a 6th-generation dairy and grape farm in a house with no air conditioning. But growing up on that farm, I learned the values of faith and family and a hard day's work. I attended Hillsdale College, did my degree in economics, and now I'm married to Tricia, the love of my life, and we have 3 beautiful kids. But really where it starts is my family, and what the Democrats did to us is why I'm running. In 2020, if you remember 5 years ago during the COVID lockdowns, we were expecting our second child. Mm-hmm. And we were headed to the OB's office for a checkup. And once we arrived, I had to wait in the parking lot because of the Democrats' COVID rules wouldn't allow me to go in. As I'm sitting in the parking lot, I get a text from my wife, and we lost our second kid to a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And here my wife was experiencing the worst thing a mother could go through, a parent could go through, losing a child. And because of Gretchen Whitmer and the Democrats in Lansing, I couldn't be there with her. And I'm sorry, I'll never be able to forgive Gretchen Whitmer for what she did to my family. And that should have never been allowed to happen. And as the next governor of Michigan, I will make sure that never happens again. But unfortunately, my story is not unique. People are struggling to make it in Michigan right now. We see it with working families. They can't afford to make it in Michigan because they can't afford their taxes, their energy bills, their insurance. Businesses are closing, and we're exporting jobs faster than what we used to export cars. And our kids are learning the DEI before the ABCs and aren't learning the skills that they need to have to make it in Michigan. I believe this is our last chance to save our state, to make sure that everyone is able to make it in Michigan. And that's why, as governor, I'll work to make sure that families, small business owners, and most importantly, our kids can make it here in Michigan.
You raise a great point there. So many people are struggling in how they feel and how they're trying to adapt to the situation. And I think a lot of them, we get into it a little bit, you're a small business owner and businesses feel attacked, but the families are the most important part, and there are people there in our communities. Is what makes the state strong. How do you get through to them or connect with them to say there is a new path? How do you set forth a vision when people have a distrust of government to say, you know what, we can do better, and I'm the leader to help make that happen?
Well, families are struggling out there. The cost of insurance, the cost of energy, the cost of taxes. I was in Gladwin a few months ago, and there was a guy that came up to me. He actually moved from Tennessee to Michigan. You don't find too many of these folks because Tennessee doesn't have an income tax. Tennessee has a lower cost of government. Tennessee is a right-to-work state. But he says he added up, as a family, he moved to Michigan. And he added up his cost of energy, his cost of insurance, his cost of property taxes, and he came up that the privilege of living in Michigan costs $5,000 more than what he was paying in Tennessee. And I don't know about you, but as a farm boy, $5,000 is a lot of money.
Yes, it is. How would you're coming from a legislative perspective, you've always been a great servant leader in that role. How do you view the transition going from legislator to governor, where it may not be the same nuts and bolts, but it's more about visioning? And how do you bring a legislature along to say, here's a path forward, I need you men and women to buy in and work with me on this?
Well, this is all about driving a positive agenda to say, how do we grow incomes, how do we lower costs, and how do we make sure our kids are actually reading at grade level, and we're providing opportunities for everybody to be able to be either college ready or career ready. And as I look at President Trump, as he's working to bring back Made in the USA, we got to get to Made in Michigan, because it's too hard for businesses to make it here in Michigan. And that means we're exporting young people faster than we used to export cars. That needs to stop. Where are they going? Places like Indiana? I mean, I married a beautiful lady from Indiana. I've been to Indiana. Michigan's a much nicer state. Look at our parks. Look at our lakes, our trails. I mean, Michigan's a much nicer state. But the last 25 years, Indiana's grown by nearly 1 million people, and Michigan's only grown by a few 10,000.
Yep.
They're going to states that have done the opposite of what we've seen Michigan done over the last few years.
I think
While Michigan repealed right to work, they passed right to work. While Michigan raised taxes, they lowered taxes. While Michigan and the Democrats increased regulations and increased bureaucracy, they decreased regulations. And so our business is so bad that Whitmer has now had to bribe businesses to come here, and that's not even working.
Yeah, I think the division, you raise a great point about population. Certainly we need to grow our population here in Michigan. We need to make sure that we're capitalizing on all the assets we have here. And other states are finding ways to move forward. They're finding ways to improve education, their regulatory structure, their tax structure. Is it possible here in Michigan? Are the divisions so deep? We're so partisan, divided. Are people willing to really get to the issue and be practical problem solvers? And do you see a future for Michigan where we have people working across the aisle? I know you've tried that in your career. I've been with you on many issues where you try to bring people together. That seems to be one of the missing pieces here in Michigan. We need to be working together, and it's fine to disagree, and we should disagree, because out of that sometimes you get your best solution. But how do we get people then to take that next step and say, I'm actually going to collaborate with you and make sure Michigan is the first goal and not my political goals?
Yeah, Jim, that's why I'm running for governors. No one, regardless of political party, can make it in Michigan right now. And it'll take all of us working together and enact the policies that will help families be able to make it in Michigan. And when we make life more affordable, people will come together. When we fix education, people will come together. We lower the cost of energy, people will come together. And right now, people are divided because they're worried about their futures. And they run from party to party looking for who has the answers. Just look at what happened in New York City.
Yeah.
But socialism isn't the answer. No. The answer is lower taxes, lower regulations, lower spending, and a government that is efficient and knows what its job is, and it doesn't try to do your job. And that's why I'm running. As we celebrate 250 years of the country next year, I think it's more important than ever that what has made America the last best hope of mankind, and we need to celebrate that together. And Michigan's a very diverse state, and I meet people all across the state, and they want better schools, better roads, more accountable government, more efficient government, and lower cost of living to live here so they can invest and grow here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, I think you're hitting all the hot button issues, at least what I hear from my members, when I hear from my conversations across the state. It is about affordability. It's about making things efficient and effective and transparent. People have such a distrust of all organizations right now in society that they're really looking for a leader who can bring truth and honesty back to the highest offices. And when I talk to our members, they want to vote for somebody. They want somebody with a vision and the values to lead Michigan. They're tired of trying to figure out who do I vote for because they're the least objectionable person to vote for. And it's really disheartening to a lot of them.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we're at this spot. But I look at things is how do we go ahead and actually implement what we need to do. Our business environment is so bad, as I mentioned earlier, that Whitmer's spent nearly $5 billion on trying to bribe businesses here. Mm-hmm. That could have fixed every local critical condition bridge in the state of Michigan 3 times over.
Yeah.
And so it's about priorities. And so when we can't even bribe companies to come here because she's made it impossible to do business, what we need to do is go through a line by line, whether you call it DOGE or whether you call it what Governor Snyder did 15 years ago with the Office of Regulatory Reform and Reinvention. But when I talk to a developer down in Taylor that's trying to invest in a new restaurant, a $6 million business in a commercial area that had a building in it, and Lansing bureaucrats come down and says, no, that mud puddle in back's actually a wetland. You can't invest that $6 million in their state. Or when I talk to a 4th-generation boat manufacturer in West Michigan that's trying to replace their docks, and they're 4 years in, and they've spent $1.5 million on engineering and consulting and legal fees because Eagle won't give them that permit. That's 700 jobs at risk that Georgia and North Carolina will be doing backflips to try to get. And we're making it near impossible for folks to want to invest and grow here to do business. We got to go line by line through every code of regulations and what permits are needed, provide specific guidelines and dates to implement them. And if they're not actually issued, that they get the refunds back to the person applying, and we need to do away with thousands of rules and regulations. 15 years ago, we did away with 2,200 under the first term of Governor Snyder. We've done it before. We got to do it again if we're going to compete and win in the 21st century to make sure our kids have a place to work and do business here in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, I know a lot of our members absolutely agree with that because regulation is just a hidden tax. It really impacts their bottom line, not only financially, but then the efficiency. And as you said, it impacts how many people can they hire. How can they grow their business? How do they improve their community by providing those good paying jobs? One issue where I want to get in, you've always been a strong supporter of strong education. You've mentioned that a couple times in our conversation already today. And Michigan employers have consistently said that talent is among their top 1 or 2 needs to meet the challenges they have within their businesses. And yet our education system is ranking in the bottom 10. And too many other states are surpassing. They're making the critical reforms they need to do to improve their system. How are we going to lean forward as a state and actually help our kids and protect them and protect the kids and not the institutions and the systems?
Well, day one as governor, I'm going to sign President Trump's scholarship for kids so every parent has an option for school choice in the state of Michigan. That needs to get done, and that's the best way to improve is by competition. 2, accountability. Every kid by the end of 3rd grade should be reading at grade level. We know by 3rd grade you're learning to read, and after 3rd grade you're reading to learn. Mm-hmm. And we're 44th. 2 out of 3 4th graders are not able to read at grade level, and we know that if you're not able to read at grade level in elementary school, you have nearly a 70% chance of having 1 of 2 things happen sometime in your life, either being on social welfare or in jail. I want to paint a very different picture for the future of Michigan than what we're setting up for our next generation and our kids. That is wrong. Every kid should be able to read at third grade. And there's states that have set up that example of what we need to do to make accountability and tutoring and literacy coaches to get it done. And then I look at 25 years ago when the decision was made that everybody has to go to college. And believe me, there's good paying blue-collar trade jobs that are out there that can't be replaced by AI, that can't be exported, and that if we're going to rebuild our manufacturing base, if we're going to rebuild our infrastructure, if we're going to rebuild our economy, if we're going to lower the cost of housing, we have to have people that are in the trades. My oldest brother, 35 years ago, he was one of those C-average students. And but he could tear apart a transmission on a weekend and put it back together and not have any of those bolts left over at the end of the weekend, which is the important part. But he was able to spend his junior year at a local trade center to do diesel mechanics. He was able to spend his senior year in work co-op, and he had a job on day one, a good family-supporting job in diesel mechanics at a farm implement dealership. And 25 years ago, when the changes were made saying everybody needs to go on to college, we've lost a half a generation of folks that work with their hands. Just look at the workforce participation rate. It's appalling. And so you got to go to what I call a competency-based education, and then you got to have options for the trades early on in school and shake up the status quo of what we're having. I mean, Mike Rowe was at an event a few months ago at the Mackinac Center, and he gave a very startling statistic, 5 and 2. For every 5 people retiring from the trades, there's only 2 people replacing them. And if we're going to rebuild our economy, if we're going to rebuild our infrastructure, if we're going to lower the cost of housing, we have to have that next generation of tradespeople with family-supporting jobs that can't be exported.
No, I think you're exactly right. You hit on a lot of critical points there. Not only are trades a critical need, we need it to build our infrastructure. They're good paying jobs. They're great careers for young people to get into, and it drives down the prices. You talked earlier about affordability. One of the things that I know personally just driving up construction costs is the lack of available labor. It's simple supply and demand. You're a student of economics, and it certainly impacts what's going to drive prices up. And one way to help families all across the board is provide avenues for good paying jobs, and then the people using the labor will hopefully get it at a more affordable price.
And I think this leads into the fact on energy abundance. Mm-hmm. What was passed by a partisan vote 2 years ago with Governor Whitmer and a partisan vote by the Democrats and saying we're going to ban fossil fuels in the state of Michigan is wrong. It's going to increase the average cost for families by $2,500. Mm-hmm. That needs to end. If we're going to compete and win in the 21st century, this means we need to be energy abundant, or as President Trump says, energy dominant. We have to make sure that the Great Lakes Tunnel's built. That's $1 billion investment in preserving and protecting our Great Lakes and preserving and protecting an energy supply that's needed. Hell, I'm on propane. Hundreds of thousands of Michigan families and businesses are on propane, and 3/4 of our propane actually comes from that pipeline. If we're going to heat our homes going into winter, that has to be accessible. And if we're going to compete and win, that means we have to have an all-the-above energy plan. That means nuclear. That means clean coal. That means natural gas. That means we're energy abundant instead of energy constrained. We have to repeal this Green New Deal, and we have to stop this industrialization at the cost of ratepayers, families, and small businesses that's happening in our farm and forest land. I figure 300,000 acres of farm and forest land is going to have to be industrialized just for the solar panels.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. We want to be energy independent in Michigan. We want to protect our resources, and technology is making it easier to do. Whether you're talking pipelines or you're talking about in the state right now, carbon capture, there are ways to use fossil fuels. I don't know of one person who says, I want to use a fuel because it's going to harm our environment. They use it because it's efficient. It can burn cleanly with propane, natural gas. You can store it. There are ways to do this. I would completely agree with you. It's got to be an all of the above. I think far too often on many policy issues, we look for a silver bullet, or we say this is the only way to go. We've done it with education. We've done it with economic development. We're doing it with our environmental policies. And I think in the long term, it just harms Michigan because we aren't taking advantage of other opportunities that other states pursue.
Well, and this gets back to how do you make sure you raise incomes, increase population, mm-hmm. and having every kid be able to have the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic to be successful in this state. And this is what it's all about long term. I mean, you talked about energy, and you look at the last, I'm 45, I was born in 1980, and since then our gross domestic product has increased by nearly 200%. The miles driven have doubled. Our population has increased by 50%, and yet our energy consumption has only increased by 20%. Mm-hmm. CO2 emissions haven't increased at all. They flatlined because of natural gas, and yet the 6 common pollutants that the EPA covers, like NOx, SOx, particulate matter, mercury, et cetera, are down 80%. Wealthier people, more productivity, American innovation drives a cleaner environment and drives better future for our economy and for our businesses, and we have to be able to compete here in Michigan. And unfortunately, with this governor and with Democrats in Lansing, we've been going the opposite way. We're at a crossroads. We're at a crossroads in Michigan. We can do nothing. We can just keep the status quo going the way it is. We could lose up to 700,000 people in the next 30 years, according to the state demographer.
Yeah, that'd be
or we
tragic.
can shake things up and or we could shake things up in Lansing, challenge the status quo, take out the bureaucratic red tape, lower the cost of living. They pass right to work, put an open for business sign out, and say we're going to compete and win in the 21st century. That's the choice we have, and that's what next year's election's about. Is it not just another election? It's the crossroads that we're at for Michigan for the next generation.
And I think a lot of people in the communities across the state feel that as well. You have a very positive vision for Michigan. You've always been a positive person trying to move things along. When you're out and about, I know you're traveling the state, what's the reaction you get from voters? Are they willing to engage and lean in, or are they just so disenchanted with politics that it's hard to motivate them? And what are they telling you?
Thanks, Jim. I've been to all 83 counties. There's 83 counties. I've already hit all 83. I've had events, toured businesses, had town halls. We've done tractor town hall tours around, several of these rural counties. So whether it's Menominee or to Monroe, what I continue to hear is how do you lower the cost of living? How do you make sure that families can make it here in Michigan? How do you eliminate the red tape and regulations that's starving business creation investment in the state so our job creators can make it here in Michigan? And how do you get woke DEI-ness out of our schools and make sure we get back to the basics in our schools? A few weeks ago, I was out in Wayne County, actually, the Grosse Pointes, and I was talking to a parent who had a sixth grader, 12-year-old. And he didn't use the they, them pronoun for another boy in the class and was sent to the principal's office. Fortunately, when he got to the principal's office, he said, well, President Trump said that there's only two sexes and that we can just use he and she. But this is what we're concentrating on in our schools. Yeah. This is disgusting when 2 out of 3 third graders can't read at grade level. You got to empower parents for choice. You have to be able to have their accountability and transparency in our schools, and you have to bring back the trades.
Yeah, I think empowering.
That's what I'm hearing from all across the state.
Yeah, and that's what we're hearing from a lot of our members. It's about transparency, efficiency. It's making sure that government stays in their lane and does what they can do to help everyone else succeed, not try to come in and substitute their decision-making power for the right of the individual. Now, we know, the team around a governor can make or break success. You have a broad vision. You have a positive vision for Michigan. How would you go about assembling your cabinet and top advisors? What are kind of the qualities or perspectives you're going to look at if you're fortunate enough to become governor with people that surround you? Because you can't do it by yourself. You need a team. So how do you pick that team?
Yeah. Well, and this is about having not just the department heads that you select, but it's about their chief deputies, their chief of staff, their legislative liaisons, and making sure that they're going through every line item of their department and their budget to drive efficiency on day one and every day. So first day as governor, every state employee is going to return to the office. If they're not, they're out the door. Mm-hmm. It's part of the problem on permitting. If we can follow our dominoes order from where it's being put together before it goes to the oven and where it's at in our driveway, and yet you have folks that are years into it and not being able to get their permit, we have to change that. I think there's ways we can innovate with artificial intelligence to improve efficiency and improve taxpayer accountability. We got to bring back the Snyder dashboards to be able to say what those accountability is in every one of those departments. But most importantly, we have to go back to say, how do you lower the cost of living for Michigan families? How do you make sure that businesses and entrepreneurs in Michigan are rewarded instead of punished? And how do you make sure that our kids are actually learning their ABCs instead of the DEI? Yep. And you drive that with having a team around you that works every day to make sure that they roll out the plan that you've put together. And there's some good people that we're going to be putting together, whether it's from the DNR to MDOT. To really reestablishing a pro-business, pro-family, pro-education administration that this state so desperately needs to make sure we're growing here in Michigan again.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more about making sure it is a transparent administration. The old saying, what gets measured gets done. And I think whether you're using a dashboard or how you have your reporting metrics set up, the public needs to know that, because we all need the public more engaged, and not just on election day. We need them engaged throughout the process, bringing their ideas and their solutions to the table through the legislative process or with members of a governor's team. It's going to take all of us. It's going to require all of us to lean in if we're going to change course.
It's making sure that what we're seeing right now, that we're establishing that set of agenda that'll move our state forward. You look at Indiana, and people show up as a turnkey on permitting and regulations. Mm-hmm. How can we help you? I talked to a business owner here in Michigan. They love the grit of Michigan workers. They're a Michigan company. They've been here for generations. They want to do business here in Michigan. They established a new business in Kentucky. They didn't get a dime of state incentives, but what happened after they opened? They had somebody knock on, what can we do for workforce development? What can we do for training? I've never gotten that here in Michigan.
Real problem solving.
It is, and it's something where it's a reminder. It's not about, I call it economic gardening. Like, let's take care of our home business first. I was talking to a business owner down in Niles, and they do coatings. Like I'm sure a lot of your members do, mm-hmm. because in the trade, it was, why are we over the MEDC and the governor overseas instead of trying to figure out how I can do business with a company in Sterling Heights or Gaylord?
Yep. No,
bringing folks, and that's what I'm hearing on the trail, is how do you bring folks together to compete and win here in the 21st century?
And that's what it is. It's about competition and winning. Now, we've covered a lot of ground here already. I know your schedule is hectic. You have a young family. You're a legislative leader. You're a candidate for governor. How do you stay focused and energized to keep going every day? Everybody has, a cycle to their day and a rhythm. Yours is 24/7, go, go, go. How do you stay focused on that?
I mean, being a dairy farm boy, you learn the lessons of hard work at a young age. If we're going to take the car to school in the morning when I was growing up, we'd get up at 5 to do morning chores. Otherwise, the bus stopped right out front. And believe me, we got up at 5 to do morning chores because we'd rather drive the car to school than take the school bus, right?
Yeah, positive reinforcement.
And whether it's you make hay when the weather is good, and believe me, in 90-degree days, you're out there till the hay's actually up. And growing up without air conditioning, we slept on the main floor because it's about 10 degrees cooler. So this is something where, God bless me, I have a wife who's my rock, who continues to support me, and that farm boy work ethic. I'm going to continue to work every day because Michigan families, Michigan workers, Michigan business owners deserve a governor who works just as hard as they do every single day.
That's a great perspective, and I want to thank you not only for the work you're doing as a Senate leader, but as a candidate. I'm always so appreciative to anybody of any party to put their name on a ballot, to put themselves out in the public for criticism or praise, but for the people willing to stand up and lead. You have a positive vision. You're doing a great job of going around the state and communicating that, and I wish you well in the future endeavors, because I think it's going to benefit society when we have these good debates, and you're helping to drive that. But, as always, our time does fly by here. I want to have a special thank you to Senator Nesbitt for joining us, sharing his vision about Michigan, his plans for Michigan's future, and what would happen if he became our next governor. This is all part of our special series, Michigan's Future in Focus. Thanks to all of you for listening. Subscribe and like our podcast for easy notifications. And if you have a desire to get more information on public policy issues, feel free to visit us at michamber.com.